Prize for 2006 for outstanding achievements in the service of humanity, advancement of the frontiers of knowledge, and the universal goals of excellence, creativity, humanism, and progress is awarded for the future time dimension in the field of cancer therapy to Dr. John Mendelsohn for being a pioneer in the area of antibody-mediated cancer therapy and making seminal discoveries that antibodies to growth factors prevent stimulatory signaling pathways.
I first got interested in biomedical research when I was in college. That got me hooked on a career plan that led to medical school and led to my feelings that I wanted to dedicate my life to using molecular biology to improving the treatment of human disease. Cancer care is an ever-changing area in medicine. I really had the privilege of starting my career at a time when there was no field of cancer care. I guess the most pivotal event in my research career occurred around 1980 when I teamed up with a group of investigators at the University of California, San Diego, including Dr. Gordon Sato, to develop the hypothesis that we might be able to inhibit the growth of cancer cells by blocking the tyrosine kinase activity of the EGF receptor. I've been able to play a role in directing our vision toward taking advantage of the Genome Project discoveries and all the new technologies to really apply science to improve care of patients. During the past 50 or 60 years, we've changed the paradigm completely. Now we're trying to find this disease early before it is detectable with symptoms or by seeing a lump growing in one's body. I see this as getting more and more important. We're going to be assessing risk in patients before they ever have cancer and trying to find it earlier. And of course, once it's detected earlier, it's easier to treat and more successfully treated. And someday we may even be able to find out about propensities to cancer and risk of cancer before the disease has even started. We'll never eliminate cancer. Are we going to change the course of cancer? Yes. Cancer will be detected earlier. It'll be treated more effectively. There will be increases in cures. And that's going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years probably. But we'll never win the war. We're always going to have to deal with cancer. Today, with the complexities of research and the wonderful instrumentation that's available, it's really important for scientists to collaborate. There are certainly many things that pull us apart, but research is an area where I think everyone in the world can join together with a common goal that we all share.
Professor Leviathan, Dr. Witz, and Dr. Schlesinger. And I have the pleasure of inviting Dr. John Mendelsohn to remain on stage and address the audience on behalf of the Future Time Dimension laureates.
President and Mrs. Katsav, President and Dr. Rabinovich, and Mr. and Mrs. Dan David, fellow laureates, faculty, and distinguished guests, on behalf of Dr. Schlesinger and myself, Thank you very, very much for this wonderful prize. Mr. David, you have done something very unusual with this type of award, bringing together people from different backgrounds with different interests that share one thing passionately: to make this a better world. Thank you, Mr. David. Now, you've heard some sublime music from one of our awardees, and you've heard an incredibly brave statement of anti-terrorism and the right of all nations and all people to live in peace from another recipient. And those are hard acts to follow. I'm going to spend a few minutes trying to give you hope for the future in the field of cancer in which I work. Couldn't have said this 20 years ago, but today scientists do understand the cause of cancer. Cancer is caused by the abnormal function of genes and gene products that control cell growth and proliferation, and also abnormalities in the repair of these genes. Now, the Human Genome Project, as you know, I'm sure, has identified that in each of our bodies there are about 30,000 genes. About 500 of those genes are very important for controlling the growth and proliferation and proper behavior of cells. Other genes control our hair color and our IQ and our muscles and all the other things that go on in our bodies. Now, cancer, we believe, is a disease where about half dozen out of those 500 key genes are functioning improperly, sometimes because of inherited abnormalities and sometimes because of acquired abnormalities such as the carcinogens in cigarette smoke. And it must be said over and over again that at least in the United States, and I'm sure here too, if everyone quit smoking, 1/3 of all cancers would disappear. No more research needed, no more new drugs needed, just quit smoking. Now, once we know that there are 500 genes that control whether cells behave properly and grow properly, and that in a particular cancer there'll be a half dozen of these malfunctioning, that gives us targets. Targets to detect cancer earlier and targets for treating it better. And I believe that the reason that Dr. Schlesinger and I have received this award today is because we were one of the early few that began to develop an approach to cancer treatment targeting the abnormal gene products. And the one we share in common is the EGF receptor. And just a brief analogy. When you get into your car and put the key in the ignition and turn it, it sends an electrical signal that triggers everything that happens in a car. But if that key isn't in there, nothing happens. And cells work the same way. Cells have locks on their surface called receptors. And from the environment around the cell, there are keys. They're called growth factors. And when growth factors insert themselves into those receptors, that triggers a signal, not an electric signal, but a chemical signal that Dr. Schlesinger has studied extensively. And that signal is what turns on cells to divide. So in our laboratory, we decided to try to block that signal by putting a piece of chewing gum in the lock so the key couldn't get in. And that really is the way the antibody that we developed, called Erbitux, works. It binds to the receptor and prevents the key from entering. So this is one approach. Today, there are over 400 new cancer treatments in development at various stages, entering the clinic, attacking various genes and gene products, using our imagination, using new ways. Sometimes it's with an antibody. Sometimes, as with Dr. Schlesinger, it's with a drug. Sometimes it's with a gene, replacing a defective gene. Sometimes it's with an RNA molecule that blocks the function of the gene. But we're seeing a wonderful menu of new treatments developing, And I believe there is hope that many of these are going to work alone or in combination, as you heard in Dr. Schlesinger's visual presentation. So this is our prediction for the future. Lastly, my name is Mendelsohn. I'm often asked, am I related? And the answer is indirectly yes. Moses Mendelsohn married Fromette Guggenheim, and I am a direct lineal descendant in her family, Fromette Guggenheim's family, so someone in her family must have married another Mendelsohn to get me here. But I'm very proud to have an indirect relation to both Moses and Felix Mendelsohn. Again, thank you very much for this honor, and thank you very much for this wonderful ceremony.